Welcome back to the Reading and Writing Podcast. My guest today is J.H. Gelernter, author of the new novel Hold Fast. And the book is published, Hold Fast is published under J.H., but his name is Josh, which is what I will be referring to him as during this interview. So Josh, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Well, if someone hasn't yet heard about your novel Hold Fast, how would you describe the novel?
Well, the elevator pitch from the beginning has been, James Bond in the Napoleonic Wars, or maybe John le Carré in the Napoleonic Wars, but that's maybe a little too presumptuous. It's more of a thriller than a deep spy intrigue novel.
And do you remember the original idea or impetus that led you to writing Hold Fast?
Yeah, I was a huge fan of Patrick O'Brian, who wrote the Aubrey Maturin series about the Royal Navy and the Napoleonic Wars. And I was a big fan of the Horatio Hornblower books and the Sharp books, big fan of those by Bernard Cornwell. C.S. Forester was the Horatio Hornblower books. And it's a period that's always fascinated me. And I had wanted for a while to write a book about that period, but everything had sort of been covered. I mean, you had between Forster and O'Brien, you had the Navy stuff very well covered. And with Cornwell, you had the land side of things covered. And I was at a tag sale one day, and I saw a copy of Goldfinger from the original, 60 post movie. This is now a major motion picture thing. With Sean Connery's picture on the cover. And I thought, it's an intelligence agent in the Napoleonic Wars. I don't think that's been done. I think that would be a lot of fun. And so that was where the idea came from. And so I did buy the copy of Goldfinger. Not a bad book, by the way.
Yeah, Ian Fleming is fun. So what was your original writing journey that led you to writing and getting this debut novel published?
I went to college to study playwriting, believe it or not. It's not really a profession you can make a living in, as it turns out. Someone probably should have told me that when I was 18. But I went to school for playwriting, and I really wanted to be a playwright, but that wasn't going to pan out. So I got a job working in production for a while, as an intern when I was in college at Late Night with Jimmy Fallon. And people would send in books, hoping to get the authors on the show. I don't think we ever had an author on the show. I don't think he's ever had an author on the show to plug a book, but people send them in anyways. So I would just take them home. They would end up in the free bin. I got a lot of interesting things that way. Like someone sent the show an absinthe fountain, which I ended up taking home because I was the only person who worked there who was willing to carry it on the subway. But I ended up with a lot of books, and I would read them, and I started writing reviews and just sending them out to magazines, and a few of them got published. And then I figured I would try to get into to comedy writing because I got some good plugs from guys I knew at the Fallon show, and so I sort of went out to Hollywood with some sitcom spec scripts, some sitcom original pilot scripts and some spec scripts, and sort of circulated them around. I had an agent, and I wrote some feature-length movie scripts, some dramas, some comedies. Things always seem to almost be going really well. Like, I remember my agent called me up one time, incredibly excited because Sylvester Stallone had personally called to ask for a copy of my script. And I thought, this is it. I'm moving out to Hollywood, going to buy a beach house in Malibu. I don't need to worry about looking for work ever again. It never worked out. I've had scripts rejected by some very estimable people, like Chevy Chase personally rejected one of my scripts. Clint Eastwood even. So I think that was probably his assistant. Anyway, so after a few years of doing that, I realized it was just, Hollywood is the worst, and nothing ever really gets made. It takes forever. And if I just wrote a novel, there would be a lot fewer people who had to like it before it could actually get to someone who would pay money for it. And I don't want to sound too crassly commercial, but I just turned 31. I was getting on in my 20s, and I needed to earn a decent living. And so I thought I'm going to start writing novels, and I wrote a few, not very good ones. And then I had the idea for this one, and I sent it to a few agents, and a few were interested in it, and one was very persuasive in handling it. Actually, it was a pretty interesting thing meeting my agent for the first time, because there was a letter from Tolstoy in his office on the wall, which was pretty impressive. And I said, "Oh yeah, that's a hell of a thing." And he said, "We have a lot of letters from our famous clients over the years, and they all say the same thing, which is, I think you guys owe me money. Where's my money?" So I signed with him, and he sent my manuscript off to Patrick O'Brien's editor, Star Lawrence, at Patrick O'Brien's publisher, Norton. Which was just to think of Star reading the book was a huge thrill for me, because I love those novels so much, those Patrick O'Brien novels. And Star Lawrence is a giant in the literary world. If your listeners aren't familiar with him, but he edited The Perfect Storm, Moneyball, The Blind Side, The Big Short, a bunch of other stuff I can't think of instantly offhand. Probably even some books that weren't made into movies. But he ended up liking it, and Norton bought it, and he edited it, and they published it, and that's how it got on the shelves. And they signed me for a couple sequels. Actually, I just finished going through the second draft of the proof of book 2 last week, and I'm currently reading through my own first draft of book 3 this week. So if I can't remember the plot of Hold Fast anymore, just bear with me; it'll come back.
Sure. Well, you mentioned playwriting, and then you mentioned your venture out to LA with sitcom scripts and writing feature films and getting rejected. And then you mentioned that you wrote a couple of novels that weren't very good. What was the transition like for you to go from writing a play or writing a movie or television script into writing a novel?
Cancer. So many lives are touched by cancer. In fact, 1 in 2 men and 1 in 3 women will be diagnosed with cancer. At the American Cancer Society, we're on a mission to free the world from cancer. It's a big mission, driven by little things, like a ride to treatment, a free place to stay, a 24/7 helpline. But these little things are really the big things, because to a cancer patient and their family, they're everything. And every day we reach thousands of cancer patients who so desperately need these services. But we need your help to get these critical services to more people and families in need this holiday season. Go to cancer.org and join the fight against cancer. It takes just minutes to donate and help provide essential support to cancer patients and their families. Don't wait. More than 1 in 3 people will be diagnosed with cancer. Go to cancer.org right now and make a difference. Go to cancer.org.
Not as different as you might think. It all boils down to, writing. When I was writing plays and trying to get a script sold, and then later when I was writing, TV scripts and movie scripts, trying to get those sold, the important thing was just to write constantly. It took a lot of discipline. None of this waiting for the muse to hit nonsense. It's just if you want it to be a profession, you have to treat it like a profession. I've always felt. And so I would just, this is what I'm going to write, and sit down and write it. A cobbler doesn't show up in the morning waiting for inspiration to make shoes. At least, probably. I mean, maybe there'll be furious letters from cobblers in Florence saying that, of course, I have a shoe muse. But it's just if you know what you want to write, come up with a plot and sit down and write it, and write it seriously day after day. And it doesn't really matter what it is, whether it's a play or a sitcom or a novel, as long as it's got a good story and moves well and it's written clearly and engagingly and has interesting characters. It's ultimately the same thing, I think.
And
By the way, I'm speaking this with the authority of someone who has published one whole novel.
So what kind of research did you do for Hold Fast, which is set midway through the Napoleonic Wars?
Well, not as much as you might think, just because it had been a period that had fascinated me for so long. I was already sort of suffused with the culture of late 18th century, early 19th century Europe and England. And just the research was reading the Patrick O'Brian books and the Cornwell books and the C.S. Forster books and Jane Austen and memoirs of naval officers from the period. These are just things that I had already read because I was so interested in them. And then, there were a few more technical details that I had to look up. And I'd just read a very interesting book about the French Revolution. I can't think of the author's name, but I'm pretty sure the title was The French Revolution. But it's newish if you want to find it. But that was a fascinating book. So aside from getting some dates and things, and making sure I had the process for making champagne correct and knew how Girondoni air rifle really worked, things like that. I was sort of already there, just having done the research through reading what I was interested in over the years.
Sure. And I should add, for those listeners who are listening and aren't familiar with all of my episodes, I did interview Bernard Cornwell on episode 178 of the podcast. So if anyone wants to go back and check it out, I'm a huge Sharp fan. So obviously when I saw the email from your publicist, it caught my eye.
Well, I'm going to have to go and listen to that. I'm sorry. I didn't realize that.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. That must have been great. What was he like?
It was great. It was great. It was a great interview. And I just finished a Sharp novel, rereading a Sharp's Tiger a few weeks ago, in fact. I'm curious. I mean, obviously, given the caveat that you mentioned earlier that you have, this is your debut novel. I am curious, what writing advice would you offer for those who are working on their own stories or novels or plays or screenplays?
Write every day. Write a lot of words every day, a fixed amount. I write 1,000 words a day. Sometimes they're not very good, but I write them anyway. If I don't get to 1,000, I don't carry the deficit over. If I go over 1,000, I don't carry the surplus over. I just start fresh, 1,000 words every day. And I never read what I'm writing as I'm writing it. Because then you'll just get hung up and you'll be rewriting the same couple of pages over and over again until they're absolutely perfect. Which is a great way to get 2 really good pages, but it's not a way to get a good novel or any novel. So just keep writing, push on to the end, and then go back and revise afterwards. And really, just if you want it to be a job, you got to treat it like a job. Sure. I think. Again, this is I'm not really not Tolstoy, but fingers crossed.
Great. Well, what novels or nonfiction books have you read recently that you enjoyed?
Well, I'm reading a really, really interesting book right now by Ian Toll, who is a naval historian who's also one of Starr Lawrence's writers. He's also at Norton and was kind enough to blurb Hold Fast. And I thought he was a Second World War naval historian. He just had a book on the New York Times bestseller list. And for the third of these gray novels that I've been writing, I needed a book about the early American Navy. And I didn't realize he had written this book, but I just found that it's called Six Frigates. It's about the original 6 frigates of the United States Navy. And it's really a page turner. It's a fascinating book. I'm really enjoying that. I just finished a Michael Connelly book, one of the Ranos Bosch novels, which I really enjoy. I've been reading some Flashman books by George MacDonald Fraser. I also just read his memoir about the Burma War, the Second World War in Indochina, which was fascinating. Maybe the best Second World War memoir I've ever read.
Wow.
I just read The King Mutiny for the first time. It's just one of those books that had slipped through my fingers over the year. And I know the movie is such a masterpiece, and it's considerably different in a lot of ways from the novel.
Sure.
In subtle ways, but substantially subtle ways. And there's much more story there. And it doesn't, the movie and the novel are sort of comparable masterpieces in different ways. But the novel was just tremendous. I probably will read that again pretty soon.
Wow, that's great. Well, where can people find you online if they'd like to learn more about you and your debut novel, Hold Fast?
Nowhere really. I don't have a Twitter account or a Facebook page or any of that stuff. Norton has a website. The book is on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and websites like this. But from here on out, we'll probably just direct people to this podcast because this is going to be the most complete accounting of the story on the internet.
That's great. Well, again, we've been speaking with J.H. Gelernter, author of the new novel, Hold Fast. The novel is on sale now, so go buy a copy. And Josh, thanks for doing this interview.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Cancer. So many lives are touched by cancer. In fact, 1 in 2 men and 1 in 3 women will be diagnosed with cancer. At the American Cancer Society, we're on a mission to free the world from cancer. It's a big mission, driven by little things, like a ride to treatment, a free place to stay, a 24/7 helpline. But these little things are really the big things, because to a cancer patient and their family, they're everything. And every day we reach thousands of cancer patients who so desperately need these services. But we need your help to get these critical services to more people and families in need this holiday season. Go to cancer.org and join the fight against cancer. It takes just minutes to donate and help provide essential support to cancer patients and their families. Don't wait. More than 1 in 3 people will be diagnosed with cancer. Go to cancer.org right now and make a difference. Go to cancer.org.